TNA is back.
TNA Wrestling! We're fucking back!
And the wrestling internet community seems pretty happy about it. I certainly am. There's a particular fondness that I have for TNA. Even when it was bad, it was at least fun. TNA was also never afraid to just try anything. Even entirely new show concepts. We've discussed Ring Ka King already, but there was a pilot for another show about a year before. And this pilot wasn't for the network partner you would think it was. This show was for the Speed Network. This is All Wheels Wrestling. What do you get when you combine TNA and NASCAR puns? Well, a crossover show that nobody asked for, All Wheels Wrestling. AWW was a pilot developed for the Speed Network in 2011. It didn't get picked up for a full series, but it's still a super interesting show. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't an intersection of racing fans and wrestling fans. There absolutely is. But I don't think it's large enough to justify a wrestling show specifically for the race fan. But Speed was certainly willing to give it a shot. In 2011, Speed were determined to expand their programming to more than just races, race analysis, and car-related shows. They supposedly felt wrestling was a great place to start that expansion. In early June 2011, word got out that Speed was working with TNA on a pilot for a wrestling show. From what I found, TNA sources were surprised word got out, since it wasn't being talked about internally like other TNA projects. It was being worked on by a separate off-site team. The leak was followed by an announcement by Universal Studios that the tapings would take place on June 29th. Supposedly, All Wheels Wrestling was owned by TNA under the Gut Check name and run by Jeff Jarrett and NASCAR driver Hermes Sadler. Now I can't say for sure, but something tells me Sadler played a huge role in connecting Speed with TNA. Sadler and Jarrett are friends and have worked together numerous times. Let's take a look at Hermes Sadler's wrestling exploits. In 2002, Sadler would appear on the first TNA weekly pay-per-view, where he had a standoff with Ron Killings. That standoff would turn into a match on TNA's fourth weekly pay-per-view. Sadler would have one more match teaming with BG James against Bruce and Jeff Jarrett, and those matches were fine, I guess. They just kinda happened. In 2005, he started the United Wrestling Federation, which pretty much only existed to help TNA run house shows. I remember seeing those event posters on DOI back in the day and really wishing I could have gone to those shows. They looked really good. In 2006, they would stop using TNA talent and ran just UWF shows until December of 2007, when Sadler signed a TNA deal to be an announcer. In 2010, TNA sponsored Sadler's racing team, joining the long history of wrestling companies slapping their logo on a race car. In 2011, we have All Wheels Wrestling, and finally, in 2015, he joined the board of directors for Jarrett's Global Force Wrestling. And yes, both Global Force and UWF will be reviewed for DCW eventually. Now back to the show. The taping took place in the Impact Zone, which was redubbed the Red Line Arena. We're introduced to the concept of the show: 4 teams competing for points. The opening matches are speed matches, and have 5-minute time limits to score as many victories as you can. It's a 5-minute Ironman match. There's different points awarded depending on how the match goes. For instance, 5 points for a submission victory, 4 points for a pinfall, 3 points for a time limit draw, 1 point for a countout, and -2 points if you're DQ'd. I like these rules. I don't think there needs to be a separation for pinfall and submission wins, especially in a 5-minute match, but I do like that there's a penalty for getting DQ'd, more than simply no points. And these teams, by the way, are made up of 1 wrestler each. Not much of a team, right? There's only 1 of you. That's not really a team now, is it? It's kind of the opposite issue the Lone Rangers had.
The Lone Rangers? That's original. How can you pluralize the Lone Ranger?
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's 3 of you. You're not exactly lone. Shouldn't you be the 3 Rangers?
no idea what you're saying right now.
Those 4 teams are Team Octane, Team 720, Team Defiance, and Team Dino. They call these matches we're about to see the Captain Series. They say later in the show that it's teams of 3, so my assumption is that they would have added to the teams if the show got picked up. No sense in paying more wrestlers than you need for this 1-hour episode. While we have a second, I just want to mention the commentary team consists of Jeremy Borash and Don West. Hermes Sadler had joined them for the show's opening and would do interviews during the show. And is there really anyone that can match the energy of a NASCAR race more than Don West? I don't think so. Our first contest pits Team Defiance versus Team Octane, as Dubai takes on RPM. Dubai is the team captain for Defiance, and JB tells us that he's inspired by off-roading and drifting, while a desert is flown over in the Titantron. And Dubai is actually, you guessed it, Daivari in a mask. Daivari at the time was in TNA as Abdul Bashir. And his opponent, the captain of Team Octane, is, you guessed it again, Jay Lethal in a mask. Interesting note here, RPM's theme would later be reused as Eli Drake's theme in 2015.
That is just a fact of life.
Lightning fast, high adrenaline, nothing but speed. He is the captain of Team Octane.
They had a fun 5-minute match that honestly was like something you might have seen on Explosion around this time. RPM gets a pinfall win, scoring 4 points. Dubai sneaks in a 3 count to score 4 points of his own. And RPM finishes the match off with a tap out via Samoa Joe style elevated crab, scoring 9 points total. I really dug the finish since Joe was Lethal's mentor in Ring of Honor back in the day, and RPM did it all in style wearing his sunglasses the whole time. I really liked the match. As I said, it was your standard TNA fare at the time. The second speed match features Swag D against Human Cyclone. Swag is the captain for Team 720, which is clear according to his scalp. He's based on motocross and BMX. Oh, and it's Sanjay Dutt, obviously. His opponent, Human Cyclone, is the captain of Team Dino, and he's based on monster trucks. He's probably the most disguised competitor on the show. Who is it? Matt Morgan? Maybe Lance Hoyt? No, it's Aaron Aguilera. Why did he get to keep his name? Is it because he wasn't working off of a TNA deal? As expected, lots of big man, little man spots in this one. Cyclone picks up 4 points from a pinfall after getting the knees up against a swag splash. 2 awesome choke breakers get him 2 more pins and 8 more points. Spinning powerbomb gets another 4 points. Cyclone tries to get a tap out in the last 10 seconds, but Swag holds on. Cyclone gets 16 points and takes the overall lead. I really like the story they're telling throughout the show, and this match really set the stage for the main event. A really enjoyable match that made Aguilera seem unstoppable. Good stuff. Before we move on to the big one, just a couple of miscellaneous things I wanted to mention. Between matches and going in and out of commercial breaks, they have these bumpers of drivers saying, "You're watching All Wheels Wrestling," with various degrees of excitement. They also have the drivers talking about the show and comparing wrestling to racing. It's mostly speed and hard work. And they must have filmed these way in advance, like before they even knew who the wrestlers would be, because the drivers talk about the show and the characters in such generic terms. Around ringside, each team has a pit box. They never get into what they're going to be used for, but production clearly had concepts in mind that they wanted to use if the show went to series. The show also uses tons of racing sound effects throughout the video packages, which end up being unintentionally hilarious.
Speed is the key.
Next up is our main event, the Big Air Challenge. The Big Air Challenge is just an Ultimate X match, and it's worth 20 points. The 3 smaller guys immediately climb up the structure, and Aguilera just stands there baffled because he's so tall. There's no way he could climb the structure, so instead he just starts pulling everyone else off. Hermes Sadler sneaks in an interview with RPM in the middle of the match, which is an interesting choice. Lots of safe X Division style action here. Obviously nobody wants to get hurt in this thing since it might never air, but I think if this was the first Ultimate X match you showed someone, they'd think it was pretty nuts. Everyone gets a little shine until Dubai, RPM, and Swag all find themselves on the X. Dubai and RPM drop, and Swag D is able to grab the AWW logo and go from worst to first, picking up 20 points. Really enjoyable match, even if it wasn't as balls to the wall as your typical Ultimate X match. We finished the show with a video package hyping up everything that's to come on All Wheels Wrestling. They aired other parts of these talking heads throughout the show as well. I do appreciate RPM sticking to the gimmick and wearing sunglasses in this interview. It's like Sting in the 90s when he didn't have face paint on. You can't tell who I am because I'm wearing sunglasses. And we're out. Overall, it was a really enjoyable hour of wrestling. I really liked the team concept and the point system. If there was another episode, I absolutely would watch it. But there wasn't. In fact, from what I can find, this pilot never even aired. And I can't find confirmation on how it even showed up online a couple years ago. But it is floating around if you want to check it out yourself. I really wish they had been able to flesh out the whole vision for the show. Could it have been overbooked and convoluted? Sure, but I'm really curious how it all would have played out. TNA is back, so who knows, maybe we'll get some more bizarre TNA spin-off shows like this one. I sure hope we do. I'm Scott from WrestleSpective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling, thanks for watching.